Take a look at the room around you. If you are sitting in a building constructed before 1980, there is a strong chance a dormant, invisible hazard is resting quietly behind the drywall. For decades, the world treated a naturally occurring silicate called asbestos as the ultimate solution for modern construction. Between the 1950s and the 1980s, it was globally celebrated as the magic mineral. Builders favored it because it was easy to mine, almost impossible to destroy, and completely resistant to fire. It offered a level of durability and safety that no other cheap material could match. Because of those traits, the industry pumped it into nearly every construction material imaginable. It was woven into everyday roofing sheets, floor tiles, and even the vital pipes carrying municipal drinking water. Modern communities effectively constructed their homes and cities using a substance that remains stable for decades, only to become lethal once its structural integrity is compromised. The danger begins when this solid material ages or undergoes physical stress. The seemingly indestructible rock fractures into thousands of microscopic splinters. When disturbed, the material sheds razor-sharp, glass-like fibers. These microscopic needles are odorless, weightless enough to float in stagnant air, and completely invisible to the naked eye. When someone breathes them in, these fibers bypass the body's natural respiratory filters. They travel deep into the lungs and pierce right into the delicate tissue lining, lodging themselves permanently. Over the next 20 to 30 years, the body attempts to heal these microscopic wounds, creating thick, rigid scar tissue. This slow progression eventually results in mesothelioma, a fatal cancer that effectively suffocates the patient from the inside out. This biological delayed reaction existed as a known mechanism, documented by the industry for decades before the public became aware of the risk. We have to step back to the 1930s, into the corporate boardrooms where industrial executives were shaping the construction boom. Inside those rooms, corporate leaders were reviewing their own internal medical research. Those reports explicitly linked their raw materials to severe lung diseases. Instead of issuing warnings or altering their manufacturing methods, they classified the findings as top secret and buried the evidence in filing cabinets. They built a sprawling industrial machine dependent on this mineral. Shutting down meant losing their investments in these massive extraction sites and stalling rapid expansion. So they kept selling it. They aggressively marketed it to builders and families as a safety material, pitching it as the best way to protect homes from fire. The earliest victims were the industry's own factory workers, whose health was traded for corporate growth, while they breathed in dust that their employers already knew was lethal. By the 1980s, hospital wards began filling with patients whose lungs were scarred by fibers they had inhaled 30 years earlier. As the connection between these illnesses and asbestos work sites became public record, American and European governments were finally forced to implement strict bans. Faced with losing their primary markets, the asbestos companies made a calculated pivot. They didn't dismantle their operations. They simply looked for new customers. They aggressively exported their materials to developing nations. They targeted areas where environmental and labor laws were weak, selling this cheap hazard to builders who had no idea what they were buying. What started as a domestic legal liability was reorganized into a highly profitable international trade that continues to this day. While modern bans have stopped new production in many parts of the world, those laws did nothing to remove the millions of tons of material already embedded in our infrastructure. The threat remains dormant in older residential homes, hospitals, and schools. You can find it wrapped around basement pipes or layered in attic insulation. This creates what safety experts call the renovation trap. As long as the material is left completely undisturbed, it is generally stable. The danger only triggers when it is physically broken. When a homeowner decides to take on a weekend DIY project, like tearing up vintage floor tiles or using a drill into an old ceiling, they break the material down and launch those invisible fibers straight back into their breathing space. The simple act of trying to update or repair a home is exactly what releases the trapped hazard back into the air. Safely neutralizing this material is not an amateur job. It requires specialized abatement experts who operate under strict bioprotocols to ensure the site is contained. Because of the original corporate cover-up, everyday citizens and local municipalities are now forced to shoulder massive financial costs just to ensure their buildings are safe to inhabit. The story of asbestos proves that industrial shortcuts always carry a long-term debt. The most dangerous threats in our world are often the ones we simply stop looking for.